Battle City has concluded. And of course, we end on a cliffhanger of Zeto MFG, Mokuba and Seto and Mokuba are nowhere to be found. The battleship's engines are dead. And oh yes, and oh yes, we care about whether or not we care about the Kai. Okay, I know I'm starting this thing off with complaints, but that is really basically my only real full-on complaint about about these 5 episodes is the very end of part 5. And I do mean the very end, because I actually like the 2 scenes that precede uh, that final scene. With the exception of that final scene, we finally have an S rank episode, which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, have we had an S rank episode? And what the hell even was our last S rank episode? Actually, would be a more apt question here. So, give me a moment to flip back. I can answer that because, yeah. Oh wow, is that actually accurate? Apparently, according to my rankings, we hadn't had an S rank episode since Match of the Millennium. Now that I'm looking at this, uh, and I don't think I gave any S ranks in the virtual world arc. I'm actually just going through that right now. Courtroom Chaos was C. Mechanical Mayhem was, of course, a rant view. Ooh. Settling the score was B. Noah's Secret was C. E. Oh, no. No. Then what was... Okay. Merger of the Big Five was the closest since in Season 3 so far, as that was A. D for Brothers in Arms. C for Noah's Final Threat. I like how I liked the Kaiba one better. Anyways, so close yet so far. Or was a D. And then Burying the Past, I think I said, yeah, A. Would have been S if the virtual world arcs thing was notwithstanding. And of course, we had E, D, E, C, E, Rantview, which is F before this in the Alcatraz one arc. I can just rattle those off right off the top of my head because it hasn't been that long since I actually recorded those videos for for this. Which, fun fact, Return to Battle City has gone live, and unfortunately Steve is late with my thumbnail, which sucks. I'm gonna have to get a hold of him tomorrow and be like, I know Compass told you to take this next weekend off, Steve, but it's late, you know. Uh, but yeah. Anyways, to get back on track, heck, yes, Final Face Off is an S rank, and yes, I did prefer 2 of the episodes in the dub for this one. Don't get used to that. There is a very high chance that past this point, the dub getting points will only have one instance left. That is my prediction as of this point. Wait, did I say that about season 3? Huh. Well, This time I actually mean it because I'm not a fan of the Doma arc, and the dub has, and a lot of and the dub could be, a a large portion of why, but we'll see. Also, I will be torturing myself with Pyramid of Light in 3 weeks from your perspective. So that'll be fun. If that isn't a rant view, ooh boy, that'll be interesting. And I'll be doing my damnedest to explain why, because, but no, seriously, with some of the shit that happens in that movie, no. I don't think an extra 10 minutes of footage is gonna save that one. Especially considering it literally relies on fucking a character over and effectively repeating a plot point. Kaiba's going is trying to start up the Kaiba land, trying to get the Kaiba land stuff going, and then something interrupts him. But anyways, so we pick up immediately. I'm just gonna jump right into the episode. Road. Um, there was one thing I didn't comment on actually last time because I was ranting so goddamn much. But I honestly prefer. I was ranting about Seto's side of handing him Fiend Sanctuary. I didn't talk about how Kaiba's version of that went. Now you might think, well, of course you didn't, Blue Wolf. Why would you bother? Well, because Kaiba's is a lot fucking better. Instead of this crap of I am going to ignore everything I've ever seen and experienced, and I'm gonna toss that all out the fucking window, which only made sense in the manga because I was asleep for half of it. The thing about the thing about Kaiba's development is that I still don't feel like he's developed. And yet in the dub there seems like there's actually you could kind of read it as that, as flimsy as it is, and it is flimsy, let's be real, because what he says in his inner monologue is actually a lot better. This will be the ultimate test of Yugi's skills. If he can use this correctly, he might defeat Marik. If not, it's all over. Now, he means that in terms of Yugi losing because he doesn't believe that the world is actually at stake, which is why the whole threat to the world thing is something that he ignores in the dub, which as I have been ranting about non fucking stop up basically all throughout season 2 and especially here in the Alcatraz portion of the arc, the world is still in fucking danger in the sub. We just weren't focused on it. That is the difference, right? You know, it's the difference between the original Godzilla movie and let's say, to pick one at random, Godzilla. Actually, no. I've actually got a good comparison. It's the 2014 Godzilla movie versus Godzilla King of the Monsters. In 2014, it was more about the characters rather than Godzilla itself. Godzilla was still a threat, though. And then in King of Monsters, it was more about those kaiju battles. Because the kaiju battles were not the focus of the 2014 movie, they were just a feature of it. Sense make? The sub is the 2014 movie, and the dub is King of Monsters. Which I know some people might take umbrage with, depending on whether or not you like the 2014 Godzilla movie, but I personally thought it was okay. It wasn't anything special, but it wasn't anything great either. So shrug. I liked King of Monsters though. I thought that was actually a fun movie. Dumb but fun. And yeah, as I have been expressing through the fact that the score after this five-parter is 45 for the sub and 39 for the dub, yeah, I'm willing to go with dumb if it's fun. If it's just nonsensical bullshit that insults my intelligence at every corner, which some people do claim the dub is and they're not 100% wrong, then yeah, I'm going to be less okay with it. I just don't think the dub is as much of, insults your intelligence stupid as some people make it out to be. Or to be more accurate, we haven't gotten to the intelligence insultingness of the dubs yet. And again, I'm not talking about which is funny because I actually have a note in part two. Is it part two? Hang on. No, part three. Excuse me. In part three, which in the sub is called Immortal Wall God Slime, or Egyptian God Slime if you're using TCG terms. But in part three, my only note was how surprisingly similar both episodes were between the sub and the dub. Now, you could argue, well, that's because it's mostly just the duel. And that is something I have to give credit to this five-parter. Now that I've mentioned it, the majority of this thing's story is the duel of these 5 episodes is the duel and the back and forth and the mind games and all of that. This is 5 episodes, but it doesn't feel like it's dragging on and on and on and on. This is another one of the very few examples in Battle City where I honestly feel like the runtime is justified. I do think if you shave even one episode worth of content out of this five-parter, you are losing a lot of the impact. And that's even if we include the whole fact that the only move that is done in part 5 in terms of the duel, well, the only 2 moves, excuse me, that are done in part 5 is literally Ragnarok's effect going off and Marik surrendering. The innocent Marik. Yes, I still have a hard time saying that, but that's beside the point. Right now he's trying to make up for what he's done, so we'll go from there. And technically nobody's actually dead, so shrug. And no, I'm not going to blame Marik for what happens to Mai in season 4. I blame the writers for that because that's who I should be mad at. Because the writers decided to take a PTSD victim and shove her into the arms of a cult. And no, I will never let that go. That was fucking stupid. And I swear, if we do start doing the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rewrite project, that might be what has me yank the fucking plug. Start whipping my co-creators, my co-writers with it. If they insist, we have my suck the dick of a cult leader. It's like if you have to get your fucking kink shit, if you have to get your fucking kink crap out, well, make Maya a stripper in the rewrite. What? I'm already considering telling the guys, let's age up the characters in the rewrite project. So, which in my opinion would help make certain things make more sense, like, I don't know, Gosaburo getting his ass kicked. But I digress. Also, Seto being, by the way, what's implied more so by the dub than the sub, is the idea that Ghost of Boro got defeated when Seto was 10. Make that what you will. Anyways. Uh. So we pick up right, as I said, we pick up right where we left off last time. Showing Kaiba handing him Fiend Sanctuary, he puts it in the deck. Joey is like saying, "Oh, you should just toss it, you, because blah 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 blah." That's dumb. That's just dumb because it's like, yeah, as you think about just a little bit later, yeah, no, Kaiba's computer figured out the secrets of Raw. He said so himself in both versions. Wakey, wakey, Joey. Yeah. So then, Marik and Yugi shuffle each other's decks. I like that both versions have Yami Marik say, "Yes, shuffle well, Pharaoh, and pray with all your heart that Ra ends up on the bottom." Ra is in his opening hand. Ouch. Is all I gotta say to that. Ouch. uh. Oh, I guess I should explain why Seto lost the point for the sub. It's because Seto is a condescending asshole. Nobody said you had to use the card. Or, I mean, I know he says it in both versions, but Seto is just continuing to be a condescending jackass and basically trying to invoke the idea that Yugi will lose. Because he doesn't understand what the stakes are. And I know, some people are going to say, there are no stakes here, though. Yes, there is. The God cards are dangerous. They can be used as weapons for a homicidal maniac who has stated multiple times wants to rule on high as Pharaoh. And if you haven't seen, I highly recommend, if you're actually looking at that as that's not really a threat, go watch Death Note and get up to the latter half for the series. Get up to at least episode 31 and see how devastating that is. Transfer, I think, is the name of the episode specifically. It's the one that ends with us being introduced to Terra Mikami. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So, yeah. Anywho. So, in both versions, Marik tries to be sadistic by showing Yugi an image of Mai. This is where we have to talk about the Shadow Realm thing. Because for years and years and years and years, that has been the biggest lie of the dub, right? I have always considered the Shadow Realm a plot hole plug. And it's all revolves around Yami Marik. Because the thing about Yami Marik is he's a sadist, and I like the idea that he can kind of show images of the damage that he's doing. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not exactly like a plot critical plot hole, right? This isn't the stupid key card from Duelist Kingdom. No. This is nowhere near that level. But its specific things just make more sense in the dub because the Shadow Realm is a thing. It's a tangible place. Hell exists in the dub. Now, some people have said, it's way worse. Yeah, because they're just saying it outright that there is hell. Like I said, they could have just used hell. Hell, underworld, whatever. So then the Shadow Games. So then Yami Marik starts the Shadow Game immediately. The gang are shocked. I don't understand that. Why are they shocked? No, seriously, why are they shocked that Marik is starting a Shadow Game? That's why I prefer it in the dub. Because in the dub, they're like, oh, we should have seen this coming. Right? They're less shocked and more annoyed, which is just better, in my opinion. Do. Oh, a couple of notes I'm gonna be glossing over because it's been a bit. I've been working on this video all week, and so not everything is going to gel with me. So I apologize for specific things. I just noticed a note in part 5 about Joy having a point, even though it was rude. Dude, and I'm not 100% sure what I was talking about with that. So, uh, so Yugi and Atem are separated in the dub. In the sub, in the sub, it's literally just Yugi is pulled out of the Millennium Puzzle slash Chamber of his Mind, whichever, ever you prefer. I prefer the idea that he's in the puzzle, that Yugi is in the puzzle when he calls on Atem, because that is how he knows what's going on in the duels. Sense make? If we're not going with the merger thing, which I always prefer, I'll freely admit I always prefer the merger of the two souls, like the two souls working as one. When he calls out Yugioh, that's that's him merging with Atem, to do that. Which is actually kind of helped by one specific instance where the swap doesn't have the light from the Millennium Puzzle activating. I mean, it's used there as a gag, admittedly. Oh, that's real mature, Pharaoh. But I digress. So Marik begins immediately with Vampiric Leech, just starting off right off the bat. Yet, I do like that both versions iterate that Yugi is being absorbed by the darkness, and if Atem loses all of his life points, both versions of Yugi die. Because that actually makes sense, because the vessel slips into darkness. Where the hell is Atem going to sit, right? Now, I don't know if it would be a similar to a certain future event, which we'll get to, but yeah, it's an interesting idea to think about at the very least. So then everybody forgets the defense mode is a thing, which is just okay, whatever. Because they're like, yeah, you've got damage on board, Yugi. The monster's in defense. Guys, come on. Ugh, whatever. So then Marik brings out Monster Reborn, which prompts a point in the sub about Battle City limits Monster Reborn to one copy. Give me a moment. I'm actually going to flip back to Let the Finals Begin. to double check that. Here we go. Yeah, exactly 40 cards. Words. Burn being banned, which is contradicted. Board wipes banned, question mark, yeah. Monster Reborn limited to 1, yep. So, there you go. And then, yeah, Sacrifice Escape. This is pretty much where Sacrifice Escape is really utilized. And named, now that I'm thinking about it. Even though that's what happened with XYZ Dragon Cannon in Clash of the Colosseum. I thought that was just an interesting rule that was put in place. Because, yeah, why would you want 3 Monster Reborns in the game, you know? 1 is more than enough. Granted, in the current game state, that doesn't mean as much as anything, but I've ranted enough about modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, so I'm just gonna shut up about that. So then Phoenix Mode shows up and goes to burn everything to the ground. Hound. Which leads us into part 2. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I prefer the way the banter works in the dub. I just feel like the banter just is better in the dub. My opinion. And then we get the Destiny draw of Fiend Sanctuary. Now, this is where Seto finally is superior to Kaiba in this portion of the arc. Right here. Parts 2 through 4 were neither for me. And Seto being effectively better than Kaiba was effectively the reason. That was the counterbalance, right? Nostalgia kind of tilted it towards the dub, but Seto dragged it out of that to put it in the neither zone. I like this. I do like this. Even if I do think the whole idea of this duel teaching Seto, both Seto and Kaiba, the power of miracles and friendship is a little much, admittedly, because I feel like that works better in the manga where he was conked out for half of it. Where Double Duel was the first time he's ever been exposed to the power of friendship, actually working miracles. Such as Dragon Master Knight, Merger of the Big Five, and Clash in the Colosseum. If he didn't have those 3 big things under his belt, And again, if you move the Virtual World arc till after Alcatraz, that still works because he can actually have those 2, he can have Legendary Heroes and Double Duel just be dismissed as coincidences. And Clash of the Colosseum just kind of, he's not thinking about that correctly because he was the one that lost that duel. So there's a degree of sense making to be made there. You see how the Virtual World arc's placement fucks it? It fucks the story of DM over. Am I making my point about that clearer enough yet? Now, granted, from this point on, we're just going to pretend like that's the case with Seto and the sub. But we'll see how true that is when we actually go through the Doma arc. Because like I said, I haven't gone through the Doma arc in the sub front to back. So, for all I know, there could be dialogue that contradicts this. Who knows? That contradicts him having learned his lesson. Anywho. So. Fiend Sanctuary is then used. To create a Metal Fiend token. Which then prompts, which if it gets attacked, your opponent, the attacking player, receives the damage. And with only one life point left, Marik should die, right? Well, then Marik pulls a play that many people have called bullshit over the years. See, when you merge your life points with Ra, in the anime, Ra is considered a fusion monster. So if you activate defusion, bam, yeah, you dodge and you regain life points. I know some people call bullshit on that and think it's a cheap move. I actually kind of like that move, if I'm honest. I've always liked that move. I thought it was kind of an interesting, uh, play on words and such. I always thought that was cool. So then the card that was that completely just made the Karibos stupidly overpowered in Duelist Kingdom is activated, namely Multiply, which turns one Metal Fiend token into three. All three are sacked so that Obelisk can show up and punch Marik in the face. And yes, the punch in the face is better in the sub because the music doesn't take a hard shift, and you don't get Yami Marik being saying, "I will not be destroyed," which is kind of ironic because I do actually prefer that in the thing. Also, I love the animation on Obelisk showing up. Sorry about that. Interruptions. God damn it. Uh, where was it? Right. I love the transition between the obelisk transition. I will say I do prefer them not saying like four fucking times here comes obelisk, but whatever. But whatever. Obelisk. So then, I also love that transition between Obelisk, between in Yugi calling for Obelisk's attack, and then that lightning flash that flashes changes from Yugi to Obelisk before he unleashes the punch. That was great stuff. So then we go into part 3. Marik effectively does an apology to Rashid, effectively just more of a confession in the sub, and just a flat out apology to Odeon in the dub. Not much for me to say on that one. I think it actually, I think it works pretty well. You know, so then, and then Marik activates Metal Reflect Slime. And actually, one of my personal favorite trap monsters, just because I love how beefy of a wall it is. And then it morphs into Egyptian God Slime, which actually it doesn't become the Immortal version until he fuses it with Revival Gem. Then Marik is trying to get Yugi to destroy his Dark Half and all this other stuff. Then Marik uses Magical Stone Excavation to bring Monster Reborn back. Heck, announces that Ra will come back next turn because Magical Stone Excavation doesn't let you activate the card on the same turn you bring it back. Interesting drawback, honestly. That doesn't exist in the real version. The real version's drawback is discarding 2 cards, which is still present here. It's kind of weird in that regard. And then part 3 ends with Odeon waking up. Then we go into part 4, and in the dub, I actually agree with Marik because he says that he's kind of flabbergasted because they have every reason to hate him, and they're still just being like, yeah, no, we're still trying to save him. Cool. So then Yugi comes up with a plan to destroy Ra because it's got all of the weaknesses of a monster after all. Also, a detail that is brought up in the sub that I think is completely fucking pointless. They don't see what the shadow game is. Why? What's the point of that? No, now I'm not talking. I'm not talking in terms of. I'm not talking in terms of like pointless, as in pointless, as in like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's more of a pointless in the terms of why of hiding it from the gang. Narratively speaking, just doesn't work because it's a pointless detail that goes nowhere. So I'm actually glad the dub kind of excised that. Now, it's left ambiguous in the dub of whether or not they can see Yugi's body getting, devoured by darkness, but regardless. I also like the point in the sub about Mokuba being able to sense that Obelisk is pissed off when Osiris takes the hit for him. That was a nice touch. Then Ra comes back. Heck, Soul Taker. The chant the chant is half-assed in this one. So I guess it is different every time it shows up, so never mind. I'll take the L on that one. Not that I care. I still think the chant is fine. I still say the hieratic text is a pointless plot point. Which by extension means the chant is a pointless plot point. But I'm just more mad at the reason why the hieratic text exists in the first place as opposed to anything else. So shrug. So then Soul Taker is used, Yugi sacrificing Egyptian god Slime, which lets him get rid of Metal Reflect Slime and Revival Jam, sacking them both for my favorite of Obelisk's abilities, Soul Energy Max, infinite attack points. Love it. Highly recommend reading the Yu-Gi-Oh! R manga because there's actually something really cool with that, with the use of that in the Yu-Gi-Oh! R manga. Okay. It's in the it doesn't it takes until the final battle, but Yu-Gi-Oh! R is such a good read anyway. I don't think it matters all that much. Which actually leads me to an interesting question with Soul Taker. Would that have worked? Would tributing Raw and giving Marik 1,000 life points have destroyed a Yami Marik? Food for thought, honestly. Also, I prefer them asking why the hell is Marik beefing his monsters as opposed to just explaining what is happening on screen. It's like, what the fuck? Uh, So then Marik saves Raw with Class System, an anime exclusive card. And then Magical Dimension gets rid of Obelisk and Gazelle for a sacrifice escape. A Dark Magician comes out. Ragnarok is activated, but then Odeon shows up. It shows up to end part 4. Then in part 5, there is. I will go ahead and say I like all the stuff with Ragnarok better in the dub, including Marik's speech, because Marik talks about he created the dark Yami Marik, and blah 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 blah. He kind of mentions that in the other one, but it's a full on apology of I don't deserve forgiveness. I understand that, which is why, as an apology, I'm going to sacrifice myself. If destroying Ra and Yami Marik means destroying me, so be it. I've done too much damage. Get rid of me. Then Atem speechifies in the dub, which is, I think, much better. Let's talk about why this is why this is different from Face Off and why this is better than Face Off. Because the suicide makes more sense here. In Face Off, it was all melodrama and bullshit because the gang couldn't figure out what Seto's motive was. What Kaiba's motive was for dueling Yugi on the roof of the castle. Even though it was blindingly fucking obvious. I bitched about that back then. Here, it actually makes perfect sense. This isn't the gang misinterpreting Marik. This isn't the gang fucking fucking over their brain cells because we need them to be stupid this week. No. They Marik is saying, attack me, I don't care if I'm destroyed. Wait, I've done too much damage. This is my penance. And that makes perfect sense. Because he has done a lot of damage. He has done a lot of crap. He has committed grave sins. That is not in question and never was in question. Marik has committed many sins, and this is his penance, he feels. Which is funny because he still gets saved in the end. After all, forgiveness can only come from true atonement. And true atonement, at least in my opinion, doesn't come from the dead. It comes from your choice to live and accept the consequences of your actions. Thanks for teaching me that one, Persona 4. I didn't think I would reference Persona in this video, did you? Well, neither did I, to be honest. Anywho, so then Marik surrenders, completely destroying his other half. I do prefer calling Odeon brother. Other. Which I just look at Rashid and go, look, you and Ishizu just need to bang and become, you need to become Marik's brother. Like, come on, it's obvious at this point. Anyways, there's a lot of symbolism in the surrender. I do prefer Yami Marik being desperate in the dub before he surrenders. Ishizu's words kind of paint Marik's actions as noble of ending the cursed Ishtar destiny, but it's eh. Then the inscriptions on Marik's back are shown to Atem after Ra is given. God cards help Atem translate, which I kind of like. Marik hands over the Millennium Rod and the Millennium Ring, which apparently the ring goes right back to Bakura, which is okay. I mean, granted, to be fair, they think the Dark Spirit is gone and blasted away by Osiris, so I'll let that one slide. Right. So then we get a gag. So then we get two gags. I mentioned Bakura, so he's over in the kitchen chowing down. But we actually start with Mai. God, Mai's dialogue in the sub makes the Dome arc worse. You really care about me, Joey. That's Janochi. That's why I'm gonna go join a cult next season. Like I said, never letting that go. I also prefer the idea that that it was Serenity's idea as opposed to all Mai's idea. I don't like the disappearance of the Kaiba brothers. I feel like they should have just told their people, "Yeah, we've got another jet. Go." Oh. And then we end on, as I said, we end on the cliffhanger of the countdown to destruction has begun. Alcatraz Alcatraz Island is going up in flames. Yeah. But we gotta have some kind of danger hook for the next episode. I feel like you didn't need that, but whatever. Needless drama. Shrug. It's about the only part of this episode I don't care for, is the whole ticking clock cliffhanger. It's the only thing I don't like. But I still rank this thing in S rank, and there you go. The final face-off, the final battle of the Battle City Finals. This is not my favorite duel in the whole show. I would argue, though, it comes in third for me. Behind my actual favorite, behind my actual favorite at number 1, and my second favorite, which by memory, which is Match of the Millennium. Now, if we go by what's happened so far, yeah, there's no contest. This and Match of the Millennium beats this, but this is still a damn fine duel, my opinion, right? There was great back and forth in this duel. There was great action, great drama, great, some actual decent bits of suspense, and some fantastic animation on display, in my opinion. But yeah, that is the final duel of Season 3. Next week, we have a standalone episode where Alcatraz goes up in flames. And then we'll have a freaking clip show, which I will just use as my vehicle to describe my thoughts on the Battle City arc in its entirety. So, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to go get some stuff done. Some other stuff done, including a thing that was just dumped on me in the middle of a recording session because even if a certain someone knew about what the point of these were, he still wouldn't care. He'd call it a fake job. Sorry, I'm rambling about things that aren't related to this. So, yeah. Don't let your family dictate your hobbies, kids. Or adults, for that matter. Anyways, regardless, this is Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walker signing out. Have a good one. See you in the next one. Duel standby.